Day 310 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And as always, I'll start off with those Russian military losses as we take a look at the exhaustion of the Russian forces. So currently sitting on 105,250 Russian military personnel losses, an additional 690 for the last 24 hours, which is equivalent to nearly a full battalion for a day. But maybe to be more precise, we know very well that Russian battalions or BTGs are severely undermanned. So it actually wouldn't be far-fetched to say that that's anywhere between 2 and 4 Russian battalions in size of losses in the last day. And most days for that matter at the moment. But also we'll take a look at the Russian hardware losses, so a whopping 8 tanks, 12 ACVs, 6 artillery, so fairly decent day. Oh, and also due to the delay from the fog of war yesterday, you can now see the inclusion for Russia's salvo of missile and drone strikes from yesterday the 29th, as intercepted by Ukrainian air defense systems. Then we'll move back to the map and we'll quickly start out today again in Russia, back to the old Engels air base. Never a dull moment really, where yesterday Russian air defenses at the airbase were activated. Now we already know this, it's nothing new. We also know that an Su-27 Russian fighter jet was taken down. But what's becoming more apparent is it actually appears so far that we can tell it was a friendly fire incident, which seems now more likely after the story broke initially. So confirmed by an insider, this one, where it seems Russia's use of its older and probably unmaintained air defense systems were put in place at this airfield because they moved so much of their working, or at least semi-working hardware air defenses to the front line in Ukraine, so that this old S-300 system wasn't able to determine if the jet was friend or foe. Which thus caused what appeared to be a very unfortunate, expensive incident for the Russian forces. It appears they were expecting a third day in a row of missile strikes or drone strikes at their Russian airbase, so they got a bit trigger happy. Ouch. But this whole situation reminds me of Russia's short-sightedness, where Russian military airfields have been left insufficiently protected, as the Russian command transferred most of their air defense systems to the front line in Ukraine, leaving Russia wide open to compromise militarily speaking. Then closer to home, or closer to Ukraine for you guys, so there was in the Rostov Oblast, so a big fire broke out near the Rostov railway station in Russia. Now, the cause is believed to be what's named as the Russian fire flash mob, effectively anti-war partisans within Russia, basically. Then we'll move to the Kyiv region within Ukraine itself, so around the Kyiv capital, this one, where Iranian-made drones have been flying from Belarus to the Kyiv region since 2 a.m. today, Friday. So this isn't part of the Thursday drone strikes or salvos, just earlier this morning. So the air raids went off at 2:10 a.m. Specifically for the locals in the region to go to shelter. And one of the drones destroyed an administrative building in the Holosivsky district overnight, which is on the southern left bank of the city in Kyiv, and 5 more were shot down. Then we'll move across to the Donbass, just to the east of the map here, where the Ukrainian forces in the past week have advanced 2.5 kilometers, or about 1.5 miles, in the direction of the city of Crimea, although not yet really displayed on this map too well at all, as they continue to take a methodical and well-orchestrated approach to their counteroffensive with their advancement tactics, where they're actually effectively conducting operations in and around the forest region, sort of the southeast, around Crimea, and inflicting losses on manpower and equipment of the Russian forces. And really, this area is starting to remind me of the Kharkiv and Kherson regions, just with the Ukrainian approaches here, as they appear to be setting up the battlefield to storm in later on with impeccable timing. And likely assisted by satellite eyes in the sky to create that impeccable or flawless timing when they indeed perform that final storm ahead. Then in the outlands, so in the Ukrainian-held regions, so just outside of Bakhmut. Now, there has been reports of explosions at Kostiantynivka, so hiding right there, which is about, I'll pull up the ruler from the very most front line, if that's working. It's about, 20 kilometers or about 13 miles from the front line there. So it's quite the rarity for this town in particular to be hit. And I doubt it was a short or medium range Russian ballistic missile, cruise missile, things of that nature, but instead flinging of artillery from the Russian forces, as they'll certainly reach that range if they want to, and perhaps a bit of a change of pace from the Russian forces after experiencing so much defeat here on the front line when they've been attempting their frontal assaults. So, decided to try something different perhaps. Then just quickly back to Bakhmut, where just northeast of the town, Russian forces made some small gains, and I'll show you these on the date map. So we'll need to zoom in. So northeast section here, go to the date map, we'll go back to yesterday, then back to today. So you'll see a small gain there, back and forward again. So not exactly a groundbreaking difference there. Then in the less publicized settlement of Klishchivka, which is about 3 miles south of Bakhmut, so here it is, Russian forces were forced to retreat after being pinned down by Ukrainian artillery. But otherwise, the situation remains largely unchanged for the central and even southern Donbass over the past day or so. Then we'll move across on the map. Let's see. So today we'll go to Kherson, the other front line there. Now, explosions were reported in occupied Novakhovka, which is just south of the somewhat recently liberated northern bank. So you probably know it pretty well if you're watching any channel, as Ukraine continues to hit well-known Russian positions in this region. Oh, and also, very interestingly, explosions occurred in Heinchesk last night, which were said to be audible by locals from about 20 miles away. So I'll just show you where that is. It's really, really quite far. So here it is here, and I'll just do a quick check on the distance. 145 kilometers, roughly about 80 miles or so. Now, Heinchesk, which is something of a new Kherson headquarters for the Russian forces in the Kherson Oblast. Many of the Russian military's southern command were forced to move back this far from the front line some time ago because it was no longer tenable for Russia to remain just south of the river after the North Bank's liberation. But my wider point here is that Russian command in particular must be finding it more and more questionable as to the safety of the locations that they have pulled themselves back to, all whilst pretending there isn't a problem. Then we'll move across to the occupied Crimean Peninsula, Russian occupied, where there were explosions in Sevastopol, so that's on the east coast, southeast coast there, where Russian air defenses were said to be active. Also, the most watched aircraft in the world, I barely bring this up much, but as per Flight Radar 24, shows that the United States Global Hawk unmanned spy drone has continued to fly unimpeded into the Black Sea as it performs its freedom of navigation sorties. As I'm sure it no doubt takes a peek at the Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula. Then we'll move across to some news for the day. So recently in Odessa, last couple of days or so, the monument to Empress Catherine II of Russia was dismantled. And also the monument to Russian General Alexander Suvorov was also dismantled in the city, as these monuments clearly no longer deserve to remain erected in the city. Then in some other news, the US is floating the idea now of sending the M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. So the Biden administration said about these, quote, Bradleys would provide a major increase in ground combat capability because it is, in effect, a light tank. So as you can see, they've got the tread wheels, decent armor, and some firepower to boot there as well. But not explicitly a tank, so they're arguably a lot easier to send or squeeze into Ukraine without necessarily causing any definitive escalation from the Russian side, at least politically. Then in some other news, economic and analysts expect the great shut-off of the Russian economy to accelerate in 2023 as Russia moves closer to the North Korean economic model, which will be compounded by the fact that Russia will have oil that it can't sell and rubles that it can't use. As a result of all of this, we're likely to see Putin then consolidate even more power and go into full dictatorship mode. And thus probably we'll see a lot more Russian oligarchs accidentally falling out the window. Just like we always see. In fact, just in the last 6 days or so, you might remember Pavel Antov was one of those such Russian oligarchs. Then in another Russian military mobilization blunder, just a bit of a quick one here, but after Russia enacted its partial military mobilization decree on the 21st of December, the decree was basically a blanket call-up for pretty much all eligible men at the time, and it didn't have really many stipulations at all about deferment for a wide range of Russian professionals, such as software engineers. Instead, many were so wastefully sent to the front line as instant cannon fodder. Then, in a bit of a classic Russian backtrack, some 6 weeks later in November, the Russian Ministry of Digital Development put out a statement saying that they realized that there are a number of technical specialties for which it was necessary to raise the question of their additional inclusion in the government decree. That's a bit of a quote there that they said. So in other words, they're saying, let's backtrack from what we've done. We really need to, instead of killing off our economy, send in extremely skilled workers so uselessly, so wastefully to the meat grinder on the front lines. Let's see if we can just pull back on this and actually keep some of these people to assist with our economy, which isn't doing so great. Then in a bit of a funny to round it all off with, so Kadyrov, who currently serves as the head of the Chechen Republic in Russia, said that he has the right to run for president of Russia. And quote, he said, but he will never do it. But of course he'll never do it, otherwise he would be the very next man out the window. But what I found most odd about this was when he was at his press conference today, it was all a bit narcissistic of him as he decided to kind of show off with push-ups. And to even top that off, it seemed like he was cheating a bit with his push-ups too, if I'm to be entirely frank. So there we go. Thanks for watching today, guys. Yeah, please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Again, thanks for all of the support. Can't do it without you guys, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.